Now in this lesson we're gonna take a look at transformations, and before we start I want to let you know a few things. The first one being that Blender is quite heavy on shortcut keys, so if I forget to mention a shortcut key or something, you can just view down here in my left corner and you will see most of the shortcut keys shown up there. Also, when we begin now, there are two different kind of schools about manipulating objects inside Blender since of 2.8. One is using the tools panel over here, and one is using the hotkeys. I'll go over both of them because when we move into more advanced manipulation tools, they become slightly different. First, we have two panels in this 3 view here. The first one being the tools panel, which we will toggle with T. So if you hit the T key on your keyboard, you can see that we can toggle that. You can also press this little icon there. Same on this side, we have an icon, and you should be in the view by default there. And we can toggle this one with the N key. So T and N are quite important hotkeys. So let's begin with looking at the transformations, and we will begin with moving through the tools panel. So I will just select that and select the cube. You can see that we get this widget here, and we can just start moving along the y-axis, which is the green, the red axis, which is the x-axis, and z, which is the blue. If you ever forget those, you can look up here. Alright, so you can see X, Y, and Z there. If we want to move this cube, for instance, along both the Y and the X, we can click this blue little square here, which will omit the blue Z channel. So just move across the red and green, X and Y. Alright, so we haven't moved up or down. It's the same for both rotate and scaling, though the widgets look a bit different. Rotation, for instance, is slightly more advanced. We can rotate on any given axis, like this. We can also take this white outline here and rotate based on the view. So if we move our view, we'll rotate around whichever view we currently have. And if we move our mouse to the center here, this orange dot, we will get, and just click, we will get this trackball kind of rotation. Okay, I'll just Control Z to move back through those rotations. The last one here is scaling, and scaling inside Blender is a bit different. Not different, but you have to be aware what you're actually changing when you scale. So let's just start with the basics. We scale on any given axis or on 2 axes, and you will see that for when we're changing the location and rotation, the scaling is changed. And for a lot of the manipulations inside Blender, the scale needs to be set to 1, 1, and 1. And when we scale in object mode, the scale value here will change. Now we have another mode as well, which is called edit mode, and if we scale in edit mode, we don't have to worry about the scale setting here. It's only for object mode. And in order to reset this to 1, 1, 1, which is quite important while we're still in our modeling phase, we just hit Control and A, and you choose scale, or you can choose rotation and scale if you want to reset the rotation as well. Let's just rotate that. Control A, scale, set those to 1. Control A, rotation. And you can see that those reset without actually changing the rotation or the scale for the object. This is now just the new zero ground, not the new starting point. Okay. The location, however, if I move this and we apply the location, that will actually move the origin point, or this orange dot, back to the center of the world, and that is something that we very seldomly want to do. So now, for instance, if we rotate this, you can see that we rotate around this point instead of rotating around the center of the actual mass here. So just Control Z to undo that and move that orange dot back to its original position. Lastly, here in object mode, we have this widget here, which will enable all our manipulators for moving, scaling, and rotation. So we can have all of these active at once. Let's use Control Z here to go back a couple of steps to around here. I'll just Control A and apply that scale again. We reset those values to 1. And now we're going to use the keyboard to do our manipulations instead. So I'm going to go back and move over to the select box tool, which is the default tool. And personally, I almost always stick to this tool because I use the hotkeys instead to do the manipulations. The manipulations are done with G for grab. That's move tool is G for grab. R is for rotate. And S is for scaling. And we had, by using these other tools here, we have the manipulation so that we can constrain a specific transformation to a specific axis. But when we use the hotkeys, we don't have that, or we don't see that we have that possibility. But we do. If we, for instance, use G followed by Y, we'll constrain to the Y-axis. Follow it with X, we constrain it to the X-axis, and the same for the Z-axis. And we just click with our mouse to constrain, or to confirm, I should say, the movement or the transformation operation. We can also hit G and hit, for instance, Shift Z in order to constrain to the X and Y, or Shift Y to constrain to X and Z, for instance. We can also hold the Shift key in order to have more granular control over our movement. And if I just right click here, the same goes for scaling. So for S and Shift Z, that we scale on the X and the Y axis, for instance. We can scale Z and just flatten that a bit. Though notice that the scale value will change. And this is because we're in object mode. We'll look at edit mode next.